Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the GBYWN Australia podcast, here for part 2 with my biggest interview to date. Yeah, that's nothing against you, Diffuser. I know that I said you were the biggest, but this is the biggest because this is a guy that a lot of us haven't really had the chance to hang out with since he left backyard wrestling. Very influential in Western Australian backyard wrestling. Once again, part 2 with Chris Zeplin.
I disagree with Diffuser. Me being bigger than Diffuser.
You really think?
If you put me against Diffuser, he would just tower over me.
That's true. But
he actually scares me a bit.
But we have heard his thoughts on certain things over the years, and we know all about Diffuser, but we need to learn a little bit more about Chris Zeplin and who he is, and what his motivations were over the years in ICWS, and what he liked and what he didn't like, and we're getting right back onto it here, bro.
Alrighty, let's do it.
Okay, so the next show, ICWS Affliction, infamous for several different things.
Yep.
Clint Marshall's debut against JD Flame.
That's right.
So already from the get-go,
you
can just tell this guy's got raw talent.
Absolutely. In the last podcast, we talked about guys like Bundaberg and Dante Daniels coming in, but I think Clint Marshall, more than anyone else, was just the guy who came in and right from his very first match, you just knew that he was going to be really big.
And he had a presence.
Yeah.
And it's like he knew what he wanted to be portrayed like when he came out.
And he was kind of different to everyone else because, like, most of the guys at the time, apart from maybe SPWS, were kind of, and yourself, were kind of, small, I guess, fairly lightweight sort of guys, but like Clint Marshall came in as this big, tall, strong guy. He's got this real presence about him, and just from the moment that he started, like, he was just really awesome, and probably one of the easiest guys to book out of all the guys in ICWS, just because you could throw him against anyone and you'd know that it would be a good match.
Yeah, one of those guys that could just adapt to any other style.
That's right, yep.
Whether he's a big guy, whether it's a small guy,
yeah.
He could do high flying, he could do technical.
Yeah.
He can do everything.
Yeah.
So
I guess the role he filled was kind of the role that Eli filled in the early period of ICWS.
Okay. So are you kind of noticing a pattern here of when things have got to a certain point, and then a new guy comes in and the light bulb comes on above your head that in 6 months' time this will be the guy?
Yeah, it does sort of happen like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just, the way things work out. And, in the case of Clint Marshall, I think he was just the right guy at the right time. Because obviously at that point, Affliction was the show where the XCW invasion really kicked off.
Yeah.
And then, during that time, Clint sort of built himself up as being ready to take that next step. And then once the invasion finished, that was when he really took off.
Yeah.
So, that's just, I guess, fortunate and for him and fortunate for us as well, because he turned out to be one of the biggest and most influential characters that ever wrestled in ICWS.
Yep. So, also, in this match that he has with JD Flame, it's infamous for the official invasion.
Yep.
And I just thought the segment couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah, that was really awesome.
Yeah, just as soon as we came out, and you see in the highlight packages you made and all that, how epic it looks, know. And to think it's just backyard wrestling, but really when you watch it, it just seems so important. Yeah. What did your thoughts on the invasion? Obviously, the promo I cut where everyone was going crazy. That was such a great moment.
And I think that's what really makes it is the crowd reaction as well. Because if you'd come out and done all that, and then there was just silence, I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah.
But with the crowd just booing and really getting into it, and like Just Mike's like shut up, and Diffuser's just standing there beating the crap out of people, and it was a bit surreal because we went to an XCW event. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but we went to one where we saw all you guys wrestle.
Was it Betrayal? Might have been the one where
Betrayal
the play group.
Retribution, maybe?
Retribution, you must have come to that.
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Because Dan and Eli, I totally forgot to mention this, Dan and Eli wrestled on the show.
That's right, yep. So that was the main reason we went, and then we stayed to watch the rest of the show, which we thought was awesome. But to see like guys like Diffuser and Just Mike and Johnny V, like in an ICWS
in the Z Arena.
Yeah, it was really surreal to just see these guys like in there, and you'd think maybe this isn't going to work out. You know, the whole ICWS guys working with XCW guys isn't going to work, but it worked really well. Like it looked really natural, and I think out of all the storylines we ever did, that was the one that really went as well as it could have done.
Yeah, exactly.
Except maybe at the very end. But we'll get
Except maybe at the very end, yeah. One thing I did want to bring up is how I think at one stage you did ask me, do you want us to invade you guys?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem that I had at the time was because we were gearing up to the end of XCW, Diffuser and Taser hated each other.
Right.
You know, Johnny B and Taser are a team, but like Just Mike and Diffuser just finished their feud, you know?
Right.
So it was hard to put ICWS invading us because the characters and where their allegiances lied was completely different.
Yeah, and I guess that was the other thing that made the XCW invasion work, because at the time we weren't really doing any other major storylines. We had the SPWS versus ICWS storyline, but that was kind of a separate thing. Like SPWS didn't really get involved in the whole XCW thing, which in hindsight maybe they should have done. But you know, that's hindsight for you.
Yeah.
But I think that's what really made it work, was the fact that, you know, you could get all the ICWS guys together fighting against this common enemy, if you like, and that really made it work, I think, and it was believable.
Yeah. So the main event sees me and Johnny V go one-on-one for the ICWS title, which is another surreal moment.
Yep.
2 XCW guys fighting for an ICWS title on an ICWS show.
Yep.
I thought it was a neat little match, you know. Obviously not our best outing that we ever had, but it was still just like a knock down, drag them out.
I don't think it needed to be a good match in itself. I think it was more the whole story behind it.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
I'm giving my first title shot to my best friend,
Yeah.
you know, instead of an ICWS
that's
guy.
right, yeah.
But I think this storyline was where you really came into your own as a character.
That's right, yeah. I think this was probably some of my best work, if I can describe it as that.
Yeah.
In the ICWS, because you did the whole finger poke of doom spin off.
Yes.
Where you poked Johnny and then pinned him, and then I came out and said, you know, you guys are going to wrestle a proper match, and then you guys just start beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And then I think you win again, and then you guys attack me afterwards, and I think you knock me out with a belt, and then
Diffuser hit you with a Samoan drop.
Yeah, Diffuser picks me up, which I didn't really expect.
You didn't know it was going to happen,
yeah. So,
but yeah, that was a great little part of the show as well, like the beatdown of Chris Zeplin, locking you in the sharpshooter, and you're screaming, and I think there's no one else, dude, that could have done what you did at that time as general manager. Maybe DJ would have done a similar
he could
job.
have done it.
He could have done it.
Yeah.
But I thought the way that you sold it, the way that you portrayed your character, your facial expressions, the way that you emphasised when you cut your promos, we're all impressed with you. We all thought this guy's pretty good, like. So that's one thing that XCW said. It was that about you, and then when Dan and Eli wrestled at Retribution, afterward all the XCW guys were like, oh man, like Dan would be a good addition to the roster if we were going to continue.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight, I think I should have.
Yep.
Like, why not? What's the big deal? Like,
I guess at that point you're only doing a few more shows, so
Yeah.
it would have been hard to find something for him to do.
yeah, I just thought it'd be cool just to pop it in there, but you know, it is what it is.
Yep. Cool.
So we get to the next show.
Yep.
Where you are actually going to be wrestling your first match.
Yes.
Now,
quite a big moment.
Yes. So it was actually, to go back a little bit, I was actually initially supposed to against Wicked Nick James at Affliction, but he didn't want to wrestle.
Oh,
the show.
yeah, that's right. Yep.
So it ended up being the Johnny V.
That's
thing.
right.
But
Yep.
I thought I'd
remember
just
that.
mention
Yep.
that and quickly go over.
Yep.
Nick is starting to wind down now.
Yeah. I think the match with Johnny was a better match than what you could have done with Nick at that point anyway, because Nick, as you say, was winding down and probably losing his interest in wrestling, so...
Yeah, was that ever like a worry for you? Because like DJ's gone, Eli's gone, now Nick's kind of winding down.
I don't think so, because we had a new breed, I guess, of guys coming in. So obviously Nick had done a lot earlier on in ICWS. So you know, if he decided that he wanted to not be involved anymore, then that's fair enough.
That's fine.
You know, he's more than paid his dues. So.
Yeah. So let's get back to Pain for Pleasure.
Yep.
Okay, so I did say to you at one stage, if you're ever going to get in there, it's got to be during this feud.
Yeah,
it's
I
got to
remember
be.
you saying that.
I want to be the one to have the
Yep.
opportunity to be able to get you out there to wrestle.
Which I think caused a bit of tension with DJ and Eli in particular, because
Really?
well, when we first started, obviously they asked me the question, "Do I want to wrestle?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm not really.
No.
I don't really want to." And for ages afterwards, they were asking, "Oh, you should wrestle, all this sort of stuff." So then when you came along and I agreed to have the match with you, I think maybe for those guys, they were a bit like, well, we've tried all this time to get Chris to wrestle, and now this guy we've only just met is going to wrestle against Chris. So
okay, well, I didn't know that they might have been a little bit.
I'm not sure. They might have been a bit, but I think they were pretty happy to see me.
To see you get out there.
Yeah, I think so.
So
I hope so.
One question I've got written down here is: did you ever always wish, I'd like to have just a crack at it one day?
Well, at one point, when we were doing the Carnage Crew and Easy Money rivalry, at one point I was supposed to have a match against Nick.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically going to be the final match in the feud.
Okay.
And if you actually go on YouTube, there's actually a video out there of me doing training with with DJ.
Yeah, where at the end of it you've got him screaming.
That's right. Yeah. So that was good fun.
Oh man.
But that match never ended up happening. So I guess at that point I thought, well, I guess it's never going to happen. And then the XCW invasion started, and as you said, if you're ever going to wrestle, then this is the time to do it. And I thought, well, this seems like the right time to do it, and I'll just do this one match, have some fun, and then I guess people will just stop bugging me saying, when are you going to wrestle?
Yeah. And as I said to you on our car ride to the liquor store just before, looking back, I think you should have beaten me.
Yeah.
I think you should have got the pin on me. I think that would have been amazing.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it certainly would have got a good reaction from the crowd, but the match ended in no contest, so,
Yeah. But it was initially...
I'm technically undefeated.
Yes, but it was initially supposed to be the Zeplin brothers versus the Heartbreakers.
That's right.
But so John didn't show up.
That's right, yep.
Which is going to be a recurring thing later on.
That's right.
But also, Pain for Pleasure, MC Cruel returns.
That's right.
So what led to him wanting to come back?
So I think at that point we were in year 12 and we were coming up to exams, so he was struggling to find time to do schwa and exams and study and all that stuff. So I think he gave away schwa for a while and decided to come back to yarding. Okay. Which actually worked out really well, because at that point, obviously the XCW invasion was in full swing. So Eli came back and DJ also came back,
which really helped the series.
Well, it made it seem as though like they'd come back to help the ICWS, and it made it just that little bit more epic. Yeah. Which I thought was really cool.
I think it's definitely what it needed, was to have some of those, real original ICWS guys back in the front.
It really felt like, the original ICWS against the original XCW. Yeah. So that worked out really well.
So anyway, the match for Pain for Pleasure between me and you. Mm-hmm.
And Dan. Dan was in it
and
as well.
Dan, of course. Yeah, don't forget about Dan. But, it's hard to remember Dan when you hit that tornado DDT. I believe that got Moment of the Year.
Yeah, I think it did. I seem to remember that I kind of just stood there while you swung me around.
I think it was basically you had me in a headlock and I gave myself a tornado DDT.
Pretty much, yeah. But I never said that. When people asked me afterwards, I was like, yeah, I gave him a tornado DDT. It was no big deal.
It was just so good, man.
Yeah.
And one of those iconic ICWS moments, I think, that'll go down in history.
It's pretty insane that, a tornado DDT, it's just a standard move.
Standard move, really.
Gets Moment of the Year.
Yeah.
Like that's.
I think just seeing you do anything was going to be, amazing for everyone. So from there, the end of the match is, the ICWS guys beat me down this time.
Yep. So kind of a flashback to what happened at Affliction.
Yep. So the build is all set. The stage is set. The next show is what I consider probably the most important show in WA yarding history, as far as I'm concerned.
That we know of.
It had two different eras clashing.
Yep.
It had the early 2000s XCW versus the now of the ICWS, who are now waving the flag for backyard wrestling in the state. Yep. We were in our last year, so it was good for us to actually do something we never thought we'd do, and have an invasion of a different federation.
Yep.
before we even get to the series, there's the SPWS hardcore match, which is an infamous hardcore match.
Yep.
And there's also the debut of Mykonos.
That's right. That was that was Mykonos' first match against El Queso Grande, I think.
Yep.
Yep.
So I believe Dan had met Mitch online or at an EPW show or something.
Yeah,
like that.
it was the same pattern with a lot of the guys that came in. You know, Dan would say, "Oh, I've met this guy at EPW or on MSN or whatever, and he wants to come to the next show." And most of the time, I was just like, "Yeah, okay, that's cool. We'll just put him against DQG or whatever.
Yeah.
Find something for him to do."
Yeah.
And obviously, in the case of Mitch, he ended up becoming one of the big guys in the ICWS. So
Yeah.
that turned out really well.
Yep. And you know, when you look back, it's actually the first ever super show. Because you got MWF, you got SPWS, you got ICWS, you got XCW.
Yep.
Bundaberg wrestled under a mask in a dark match against an EPW trainee.
We won't say too much about that.
We won't talk too much about that. But we had, all different aspects of backyard wrestling in WA all in the one show. So.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy how it all just came together at that one moment in time.
Yeah.
Where, we had those 3 or 4 different feds, and they all just happened to be together in this one day in our backyard. Like that's pretty insane when you think about it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't think I even really realised the magnitude of that until I talked to DJ on his podcast about it.
Yeah.
I was just like, that was crazy for all of us. And, we should have taken a step back and thought, wow. But I think so much was going on that we couldn't really, enjoy it as much as we could have at the time because so much was going on.
I think so, yeah. And I think that's been a recurring theme for me throughout ICWS is that, you focus so much on, getting the booking right and having good matches and making sure that everything makes sense that, sometimes you don't get that opportunity to just step back and think, wow, this is actually really cool.
Yeah.
And I've only really done that, I think, since I've moved away from backyard wrestling where, watching the recaps now, and, you look at it and you think, wow, that was actually a really good storyline, or, that worked out really well.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
So let's talk about the series.
Yep.
So we crack off the show with Just Mike versus JD Flame, the two resident heels of both federations.
Yep. That was a great match.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
And for Mike,
yeah,
to go out there and have a match with someone he doesn't know, and for it to actually be good, credit to JD Flame.
Yeah.
But Justin said in his podcast he learned a lot from Mike in that match, just of the way of playing to the crowd and the way that they. I'm the better heel. I'm going to get them all booed. And they were low blowing each other and eye raking each other. And everyone was cheating all over the place.
Yeah, it was good. But even just that match in itself, like Just Mike versus JD Flame, when would that ever happen?
Never.
Like it's just one of those crazy matches that just came about because of this whole ICWS versus XCW thing, and it turns out to be awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? Even if they were in the same federation, that match wouldn't happen because they'll be more likely to be a tag team.
That's right.
Of anything,
something like that.
Yeah. So it was a great way to kick off the show.
Yep.
Obviously, during the show, we're having some issues with communication with Johnny V.
Yep.
I believe he was hungover in bed. He believes that he had something to do with a job interview, but who has a job interview on a Saturday? So, unfortunately, it seems Johnny V isn't going to be showing up. I must have called him 5 or 6 times.
I know you were really disappointed about that.
Actually. I was, because I really, I wanted this to be a legit series.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been good if Johnny V was there.
And
he was originally supposed to face Mike Delcano, but Delcano had his wrist.
Yep. He was doing a backflip or something, and something stupid like that.
Yeah. So DJ ends up finding himself into the tournament.
Yep. Which I think was pretty cool, actually, because obviously being one of the originals.
I think it was more fitting than nothing against Delcano, but with having an original.
Yeah.
If it was Knuckles, if it was DJ, if it was Nick James, having that name value.
Yeah. I guess it's a shame that we were constrained to only 5-on-5. Like, we could have easily done 6-on-6 or 7-on-7.
Yeah, exactly. If only I had really bugged guys like Chris Rowe of Horny to Horny or Blade Shaw to come along.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. But on the day, I do remember calling Blade.
Yep.
Or messaging him on Facebook and seeing if he could come because John's not coming.
Yep.
So we almost got Blade Shaw versus Daniel Johnston in 2010, and to think that they actually had a match this year for the first time
there you go.
Was it's pretty spun out. But in the end, I ended up taking Johnny V's place.
Yep. Which I thought worked out pretty well.
It worked out well, but I think I just wasn't really thinking, and I didn't really come up with a real plan for him because I was too worried about me and MC Cruel.
Yeah, which is fair enough because that was sort of the big final match. So.
Yeah, so I ended up wrestling DJ, and
Yep.
it's basically a squash match, which really shouldn't have happened. It should have been more. He should have got more offense.
I think DJ only got 1 or 2 moves in that
I think
match.
he got a clothesline, and maybe that's about it.
But that was his first match back as well because he'd
Yeah.
done the match at Twisted Metal 4,
Yeah.
and then he'd been away for a while. So I don't know if maybe he was a bit rusty as well.
Yeah.
But you know, for a filler match in the 5-on-5 series, and you know that leveled the series at 1 each. So
Yeah.
that sort of set the tone for the rest of the series, I think.
Yeah.
where-
I remember we were trying to figure out a way
Yeah.
to just not make it seem like me doing 2 matches will maybe make it not as impactful if I do lose the second match because I've already had 1
Yeah.
match, so I've got an excuse, you know?
I guess just the whole 5-on-5 thing as well. It would have been good if it was actually 5-on-5
Yeah.
instead of like 5-on-4. You wrestle twice. But,
Yeah.
You know, it
But
was what it was.
We couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
we,
it still worked.
we were handcuffed, but
Yeah.
we kept going, and then let's get to this one, match of the year.
Yep.
Typical. Typical of Diffuser to have 1 match in ICWS has to be match of the year. So him and Clint Marshall go out there and
Yep.
blow the roof off,
Yeah.
man. That was great.
That was a great match. And I think we talked earlier about Clint Marshall coming in and being really good straight away, but I think that was the match that really made him, like, to go out there against Diffuser, a guy who he'd never even met before that day,
Yeah.
and to just have, you know, a match of the year was...
And it's his 3rd match.
It was amazing, yeah. Yeah.
I think he wrestled Justin and Nick James.
That's right.
On various shows. And then all of a sudden Diffuser and him have match of the
Yeah.
year. It's just crazy. And
Yeah.
Diffuser, little did he know that what he did with Zibby helped Clint Marshall
That's right.
ascend to a
Yeah.
higher level, not just on the card, but in everyone's eyes. Wow, this is going to be the next guy.
It was almost a passing of the torch in a way.
Yeah.
Even though Diffuser won the match, I think,
Yeah.
you know, that was the match that made people
made
realise that, you know, Clint Marshall is going to be the next guy
Yeah.
to take over.
Yeah. So then after that, I think we had the SBWS match. We
Yep.
had a bit of a break here and there. I think Mykonos had his debut.
Yep.
What were your thoughts on Mykonos and his debut? I thought he was quite good for his first match.
Yeah, he was pretty good right off the bat, I think. I think because we had so many mid-card guys at that point, it took him a bit longer than maybe guys like Mike or Justin to find his place. But, you know, that's just the way it works out sometimes. But
Yeah.
he persevered, and obviously 2 years later he ended up winning the ICWS Championship. So that was reward, I think, for all the effort he put in.
Yep. So the next match on the series, Nick Ariel versus Dan Zeplin.
Yep.
I love
another great match.
another great match. I love the tit for tat with the head
Yeah.
scissors takedown
Yeah.
spot. Nick Ariel was the Dan Zeplin of XCW. Dan Zeplin was the Nick Ariel
Yep.
of ICWS. Both the heart of both federations.
Yeah.
So good dynamic to have there.
Yep.
And tremendous match.
Yeah. They, again, like Clint Marshall and Diffuser, they just really tore the house down and had a really good match where, and again, one of those matches that would never happen otherwise.
Yeah, never. And I had hoped that we could have done it again, but I'll get to that later on.
Yep.
When I have a little whinge about something that happened recently.
Okay.
But going into the main event,
Yep.
obviously there was a bit of back and forth over how we were going to end this series.
That's
you
right.
felt strongly about ICWS winning.
Yep.
I didn't mind either way, but the XCW guys didn't want to lose to guys who were younger than them.
And I think that's fair enough. I know at the time I was a bit pushy about wanting ICWS to win because I felt that having it end as a draw would be a bit anticlimactic. But I think, with it ending in a draw and then you losing the title to Dan afterwards, I think that still worked in a way.
Yeah.
And I remember afterwards when we put the recap up, and I think it was Tommy Taboo gave some feedback, and at the end he said, I'm glad it finished as a draw because that was a good way for both feds to look strong. And I thought, you know what, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a good way to finish it.
I still think, looking back, maybe you guys should have just got the win. I mean...
Yeah, but I guess,
It wouldn't hurt.
I can understand both points of view, really. And, obviously you guys were about to wrap up, but we didn't know how long we'd be going along.
I think I was also in the mindset, I didn't want to lose to Eli, but I wanted to lose to Dan.
Yeah, fair enough.
So that's where I came up with the idea. Well, I'm going to Schwa. Great,
Yeah.
great. So
Yeah.
now you're losing Taser.
Yeah.
So I came up with the idea of I'll wrestle Dan afterward. I know maybe it wasn't the best thing. I should have maybe just told Schwa, look, I could do one more match.
Yeah.
Because
the plan all along was to do, I think it was like a last man standing, at Seasons Beatings, which was going to be the final match in the feud, and that would have been a great way to finish it. But obviously it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But
and I told I don't know who I told, maybe Dan in his podcast. My idea was, if you ever saw ECW's first ever pay-per-view, Barely Legal.
Yep.
Within like a minute and a half, Terry Funk is now challenging Raven for the heavyweight championship.
Yep.
Terry Funk's just gone through a war.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he gets the win.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to go for with Dan.
Yeah.
But I think maybe I'd already had 2 matches.
Yeah.
I wrestled Eli in a great match.
Yeah.
And I just didn't come up with the goods.
And it was the end of a long show as well, and I think,
Yeah.
people were tired by that point.
Yeah.
And I guess when you look back at it now, it seems a bit rushed how you had your match with Eli ends in a draw, and then suddenly, Dan wins the title in about 2 or 3 minutes, and it's all a bit too sudden, I think. But obviously with you going to Schwa, we didn't really have a choice.
I think I was just over backyard wrestling.
Yeah,
I was thinking this is my swan song.
Yeah,
little did we know what would happen just over a year later.
There you go.
So suddenly I'm leaving.
Yep.
Sad to see me go. You're probably thinking there's so much more that could have happened.
I think so, but at the same time, it felt like a good way to go. Like, you came in, did the invasion, won the title, and then you lost the title, and the invasion ended, and that was it.
Yeah.
And you would look back and say, oh, remember that time when that Taser guy was here?
Yeah.
And obviously, with what happened with Schwa, you ended up coming back about a year or so later.
I remember at DJ's 18th.
Yep.
I was still in Schwa.
Yep.
And had a few beers. I think you'd had a few beers, and
Yep.
I was just whinging to you about. I miss ICWS, dude. I miss you being in charge of what I'm doing.
Yep.
Like, I want to come back, and you're like, I see your eyes widening. Yes, yes, yes. So I'm like, man, I really want to come back. Don't tell anyone, but I really want to come back. But that's another story.
Which we'll get to soon.
We'll get to. Okay, so you close out the year with Dan Zeplin unifying the ICWS and the SPWS championship.
Yep.
So, first of all, I want to ask you your thoughts on using SPWS titles on ICWS events. And also, just the end. Well, it wasn't really the end of the feud because he did continue on with Chaos to the beginning of 2011. But
I think
your
that was
thoughts
more
on that match.
That was more just the end of SPWS as a fed, I think. Because at that point they'd only done 2 shows, and it was pretty clear that
nothing was going to happen.
That's right. So I think at that point it was just let's unify the titles and have a nice clean way to, I guess, bring the SPWS as a federation era to an end. Yeah,
and have them be really, what's the word, assimilate?
Yeah,
assimilate
I think so.
Into just being an ICWS
as an official thing, because obviously Ice and Chaos have been around for a while at that point, but just to sort of, I guess, give some official closure to the whole SPWS thing.
Yeah.
They had that match, the infamous match where they went to our primary school and did the match in the park. That was probably the one match in the whole of ICWS that I wasn't entirely comfortable with. I didn't really like the idea of going to a park and wrestling in a public place where people might see us and call the police or whatever.
They love that.
Yeah.
Dan, Ice, Chaos, they love that. But me,
I wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. But I went along with it, and
it was different.
And I think in a way it was a great way to wrap up SPWS as well, because in the first show the main event was Ice and Chaos going off to the park and doing their stuff there. So to have the last official match finish at the park as well was pretty cool.
Well, fair enough. There was, I think the finish of the match was you put Ice in the boot.
That's right.
And laid on top of the boot.
That's right.
And got the pin that way.
So it was a very, very backyard wrestling sort of finish.
Yeah. Only in backyard wrestling we see stuff like that. Yeah, well, I don't know. Sometimes in WWE, you never know.
Yeah, but that was one of those things that was a bit different, but it kind of worked.
Yeah. All right, so 2011 begins.
Yep.
We're having a bit of things going on here with the pro wrestling thing. It seems like Eli has set set the bar now.
Yep.
Everyone seems to want to be a pro wrestler now. Now I've joined Schwa. DJ's in training with Schwa.
Yep.
And he's managing JD Flame at this time.
Yep.
I want to talk a little bit about DJ before I get to JD Flame and Delcano.
Okay.
Well, was his indecisiveness over if he was staying or going, was that ever a source of frustration for you? Because he'd come back, he'd do a thing, then he'd go, and then he'd come back. And
I don't know. I think, obviously, from a booking point of view, it would have been nice if he'd sort of made a decision one way or the other, because then we could either, plan storylines for him or, just do a farewell match and be done with it. But, at the same time, I wanted him in ICWS, but I didn't want him... I also wanted him to, pursue his dream of doing pro wrestling, so... I didn't really mind too much, and when he went off to Schwa and he was gone for a while, I was like, well, okay, I guess that's we won't see him again in backyard wrestling. And then when he came back, it's like, oh, that's cool, DJ's back. Now we can work with him again.
Yeah.
So it wasn't too bad, I think, and I guess that's just the way things work out sometimes. That obviously DJ was a little uncertain about whether he wanted to do the whole pro wrestling thing or not, and. I think, maybe at that point in his life he wasn't quite ready to make a decision one way or the other, whereas now maybe he is. So, that's just part of growing up, I think, deciding what you want to do and where you want to be.
Yeah. So I can tell that I'm skimming through certain parts of ICWS because I was obviously worried during my research that I'm putting too much stuff in there.
That's all right.
So I have skipped forward to Roadhouse on March the 5th.
Okay.
Bambi debuts.
Yep.
So Letitia is coming in for a short stint as a wrestler on the roster. What were your thoughts on having a girl in ICWS?
I thought it was awesome. Obviously, again, it was something a little bit different. I remember she had a really good feud with El Queso Grande, which was, even for EQG, was probably the first time we'd really used him in a storyline sense. Yeah. Not just being the welcoming committee, as you say, for new guys coming in. So it was a chance to do something with him, and obviously the guys were really happy to see a girl like Bambi wrestling in the base. So I thought it worked really well, and obviously she only did a few shows, but she had some good matches, and we got a good storyline out of it, which was great. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, I don't think I ever went to a show where she was on it, so I never actually got to see it, but I think I've seen recaps and stuff. Also at Roadhouse is the debut of Three Dog. So Mykonos has used his influence on being in the ICWS now to bring in Three Dog.
Yep.
Is it a breath of fresh air to have a big guy like Three Dog come in? And
I think so, yeah, and he's a big guy, but he's not a big guy in the same way as, say, a Diffuser or a Clint Marshall. He's like I guess, a real big personality as well. Mm-hmm. Outside of wrestling, he's a really funny guy and really entertaining to be around. Yep. But he came in and straight away, again, he was really awesome. He had that really good feud with Mitch, which lasted over a few shows and really helped get both of them over.
Yeah.
That was really cool to have him in and have someone with a bit of a different style, I think, as well.
Yep.
Just to freshen things up a bit.
And what was the idea behind, I don't know if it had started yet, but Mykonos was doing an open challenge and he was staying undefeated for a while.
That's right.
What was the idea behind all that?
I think, to be honest, there was one show, it might have been Aussie Anarchy, where Mitch had nothing to do, so we did this open challenge thing, and there ended up being a recurring theme over the next few shows.
So just organically,
I think so, yeah, and that happens a lot with storylines in ICWS, where you just start off with one thing, and then that leads to another thing, and then and around that period leading up to Twisted Metal 5, there was a lot of storylines like that. So you had Bambi and EQG, you had Mykonos and Three Dog, Knuckles and Dante Daniels, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
There was
seemed like everyone had a direction now.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on at that time, which, maybe by itself none of it was as big as, say, the XCW invasion, but it was just a lot of little different things happening.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
And it all came together to that Twisted Metal 5 to make a really big show.
Yeah. And it seems like every year Twisted Metal's getting bigger and bigger
That's
and
right.
bigger.
Yeah.
And I can really see you maturing so much as a booker during this time
Yeah.
because everyone had a direction. Every character was doing something.
Yeah. I always tried to do that.
Yeah.
I always tried to make sure that everyone had something meaningful to do. Because to me, there's nothing worse than just, you come up with a card and then you've got two guys left over and you just throw them together because they've got nothing else to do. Like, I always tried to get something out of it and make it a meaningful match so that, everyone felt like they had a spot on the card and, you can watch the show and think, wow, all these guys are really awesome. You don't have this guy over here who's not doing anything for months.
Yeah.
It's really good, I think, to, like you say, have a direction for everyone.
Yeah. So I did want to dart back just slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Mykonos wrestles Nick James in what at the time looked like would be his last match.
Yep.
Last match seems like Nick James put over Del Carno, Clint Marshall, Mykonos. I guess is he now in that role of?
I think so.
Of just helping put over the new guys before he's gone.
I think so. Yeah.
What was it like talking to him and say, "Do you want to come and wrestle on this show against this guy?" How do you talk to a guy that's trying to wind down?
To be honest, I think it was DJ who talked to him because obviously being brothers. I don't think I had a lot to do with Nick at that point. Like, it was really just a case of, if Nick wants to wrestle on the show, then we'll find something for him to do, and if he doesn't, then so
I think one thing that I used to think was, like, I came in and I heard that he was like a champion, but I kept on seeing him lose to the new guys. And
Right.
I was always confused by. I was like, why? Like, I thought he was like the champion,
right?
and why is he always losing? When
Yeah.
I guess I realised, he's winding down now.
Right, yeah. So I think when you came in was the point where it was like a year after he'd lost the title.
Yeah.
And like you say, at that point he was just mostly in that role of putting over the new guys, which I thought worked quite well.
Yeah, I think he did a good job, and props to him for not complaining about doing that.
Yeah.
And obviously he was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So good on him.
Yeah. I think DJ was in that role for a while as well.
Yeah, he was.
He was putting over the new guys.
I think he lost to Mykonos, he lost to a bunch of the guys.
But I think he liked doing that as well.
Yeah, I think he's always liked that.
Yeah.
And good on him for that.
Yeah, definitely.
So one thing I have not mentioned too much so far, but I should have, JD Flame and Declan Diamond's alliance. I thought that was incredible. What a dynamic between those two.
Yeah, they were really good together. Because I think that started when DJ was still at Schwa, so he couldn't wrestle.
But he could do managing.
He could do managing, so he was managing JD for a while, and then when DJ came back to wrestling, they formed a tag team.
Yeah.
And that worked really well. Like, they were just like the two, I guess, loud, love to hate sort of characters that just worked really well together.
Yeah.
And that whole storyline of how they were a tag team and then they broke up and had the rivalry against each other, which is sort of something we've done a lot across ICWS, but yeah, I think that was one of the best examples of it.
Yeah. So just scaling back again, it was January 23rd, 2011.
Yep.
SPWS wrestled JD Flame and Declan Diamond in a tag team match.
Yep.
Are you suddenly starting to have a few more tag team matches, a few more tag teams form?
Yeah.
Are you thinking more, maybe soon we'll do a tag team championship?
I don't think that was really on the radar at that point. I think it was more just how the storylines were working out and also a chance to do some different types of matches, because at that point we'd mostly done just singles matches, and like tag matches and multi-man matches weren't really a thing.
Yeah.
But as my booking was, or our booking was maturing, I guess we were sort of becoming more interested in trying different things like tag matches and triple threats, four ways or whatever.
Yep.
So
well, speaking of triple threats, back to Roadhouse on March 5th. The main event is it's interesting to me that within a year TWA are in a main event.
That's right. Yep.
Of ICWS.
Yep.
It's Clint Marshall versus Del Carno and JD Flame for the Hardcore Championship. A lot of problems between JD and Mike backstage,
which I don't think I knew about at the time.
No.
Never I might have vaguely known about it, but I don't, because I know Mike talked about it in his episode, and I was thinking, I didn't know that they were.
Oh, well, wait till you listen to JD Flames.
Okay.
A lot happened, and you wouldn't believe it. But Clint Marshall wins the Hardcore Championship. Yep. Obviously, you're building him now to Dan Zeplin, who is still amidst his feud with Kilowatt Chaos.
That's right.
On the same show, Chaos beat Zeplin.
Yep.
To earn a shot at the championship.
Yep.
So a lot of things happening there. You know, that's just one show. 3 dog debuts, Bambi debuts. You got Yoshiaki and Destructor. You know, just to add another match to the card with the masked wrestlers.
Yep.
So moving forward from there, Bloodline, April 17th, 2011.
Yep.
See what I've got written down here. Knuckles returns!
Finally!
So Knuckles returns and he beats Destructor with a Knuckles lock.
All right.
So now you finally got another original back on the roster.
So he had come back, I think, at the start of 2010, because I remember he did a match against Eli. Which was a match that we'd wanted to do for a long time, because they'd never wrestled before.
Okay.
And I remember Eli was really keen to do that match.
Okay.
And they finally did.
Yeah.
And then Knuckles went away again for a while, and then he came back at Bloodline, and I think this time he was back for good.
Yeah. Which
was really awesome, because, you know, Knuckles is one of my best friends, and I always loved having him at shows.
Yeah.
And
it's always good to have some of the old...
That's right.
The old guard...
That's
back
right,
involved.
Yeah. And it was from this point onwards where he had a really solid run in the ICWS, which we'd always wanted.
Yeah.
And I think at this point he had a title shot against Clint and a title shot against Mike.
Yeah, he actually had invented a couple of shows, which is good.
Yeah, so that worked out really well. Just having him back in the fold was really awesome. You know, because he was the first champion and original. So that worked out really well.
So, as I was mentioning before about the pro thing, Del Cano did drop the hardcore title because he was leaving.
That's right.
To go to do Schwa. And I believe soon after this, somewhere down the line, JD Flame leaves for one event and then comes back the next event because Schwa moves to Maddington.
Something like that. Yep.
So you're losing, 2 guys who are still on the rise.
Yep.
Was that, a bit of a pain for you? Like, oh man, I really wish they could stuck around.
I guess it was, but again, like with DJ, you're not going to say, "Oh, don't go to pro wrestling." Like, it's if it's their dream, then you just got to let them go sometimes.
Yeah, but they didn't last too long.
That's right, and with Mike's case, like he was hardcore champion for a while, and he had a really good run. So,
and a good feud with JD Flame.
That's right. Yeah, he that feud with JD sort of lasted nearly a year, I think.
Yeah,
and the whole Sky Summers thing, and which I won't talk too much about.
Yeah, well, no one seems to want to talk about that too much,
no.
But it happened. So, as long as it's not like herpes and it comes back every now and then. It was quick. We got rid of it.
Yeah,
and no one's infected anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's pretty harsh.
No, that's fair enough.
Yeah. All right. So. Just another question, just out of the blue. Who made the event logos and came up with the event names?
So,
I'm going to get a beer, by the way.
All right. So, event logos was usually me. I think DJ and Nick might have done some of the early ones, but then I did most of them afterwards. The names was always a bit of a source of contention for me because I always wanted to do like fairly standard sort of names, whereas Dan and DJ wanted to do more stupid names, and
that's something that I've had to deal with in WCW.
Right.
People want to do silly names, except for the big shows, and I'm like, no, not all the time. Like maybe every now and then that's okay. Like we had Rampage,
which
was Ram Page, which was the WWE diva.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Or Lana's ass.
Yeah,
just like that's plain and simply like she's got a good ass. We're just calling a show Lana's ass.
Yeah.
But
I was never too keen to do stuff like that, and I think
it's because of the East Coast feds were doing it all the time.
Yeah, I think so. But
like who dropped the weed or whatever, who dropped the pot, or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And like DJ would always say, "Oh, it's just an event name. Who really cares?" But I wasn't.
Well, he says that now, and we're like, "No, come on." But
do you really want to look back in 5 years and look at a show called, Lana's Ass or whatever?
Well, yeah. All right, so let's get to Ode to Glory.
All right.
I think, am I skipping over something here?
No, that sounds right.
What was that event? Oh, Bloodline. Did anything else happen? Just quickly skim over it.
No, I think we covered
Bambi and EKG still go on Mykonos.
Yep.
Doing his open challenge with Dark Ice.
Yep.
Knuckles
he was
returns.
doing an awesome feud with 3 Dog at that point.
Yeah. 3 Dog beats Yoshiaki.
Yep.
And Dan Zeplin and Chaos in a last man standing match. So I guess this is the last man standing match Dan was hoping to have with me.
Yep.
Just took that and put it onto the Chaos thing. So
Yep.
Ended in a draw.
Yep, that's right. Which I thought was a good finish because, obviously being last man standing, Chaos is much bigger than Dan, so you wouldn't really expect Dan to beat Chaos in that situation.
Yeah.
So I think we did a finish where they were both on a ladder and then there were tables on either side and they both fell through the tables.
Yeah.
And then both got counted out. So it was a way for, I guess, Dan to retain the title without Chaos actually losing.
Yep.
So.
So the next show is Ode to Glory.
Yep.
I like that name. It's a good show name.
Yep.
May 28th, 2011. Infamous for the debut of Tim Justice.
I don't know if infamous is the right word.
Well, what was it like dealing with bright and wide-eyed young Tim Justice, who just saw the world in a different way, so passionate, sometimes too passionate? What was it like?
I liked his passion, and I liked what he brought to the table. I think sometimes he was a bit too eager, as you say, and sometimes he wanted to do things which, in the bigger picture, didn't really make sense. But I would take that over someone who didn't really care.
Yeah, me too.
At least he was trying, and at least he wanted to do well.
And he's showing his passion.
Yeah,
if someone shows they're passionate, well,
that's right. Which eventually he got to that point where he was respected, I guess, as a legitimate wrestler on the roster.
I think it took a while. I think all he really wanted was just people's respect. And
That's
I think
right.
Eventually he did get it.
That's right. Yeah.
So his debut match is against Dante Daniels.
Yeah. So Dante Daniels comes back
So he
after
comes back.
the 2 year absence.
Yeah, and I think he actually wrestles the next show as well. So
That's
it's
right.
like the only time he did 2 shows in a row, I think.
That's right. So he actually did that feud with Knuckles at that point, which was a feud that DJ and I had wanted to do for a long time, like pretty much since Dante had first joined.
The Croatian Sensation versus the
Serbian Terminator. That's right.
the Serbian Terminator. That's so good.
So that was a pretty natural feud. So
Yeah.
that was something that we wanted to do for a long time, and the fact that match happened at Twisted Metal 5 was awesome.
Yeah.
They were supposed to have a rematch later on, which Knuckles was going to win, but as we know, that never ended up happening.
Never happened. He never got his revenge.
Unfortunately not. But but the fact that they had one match, which I thought even that would never happen,
Yeah.
at least
At least you got it to happen.
and that was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think Knuckles really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah, good. Alright, so what else happens on this show? JD Flame gets in the main event.
Yep.
As a result of losing, he has to leave the company, but then he comes back anyway.
Yeah.
Clint Marshall retains the title over Chaos, which is great for him. Mykonos continuing his thing there.
Yeah, so everything just going along quite
Yeah,
nicely.
everything's going on nicely. And Bambi against Destructor. She's getting another win leading up to TM5, where she'll probably face EQG.
Yep. And I think that was also the show where we did the promo to set up Dan versus Clint. At Twisted Metal 5.
Okay.
So that was where we had the champion versus champion match to crown the undisputed champion.
Good stuff. Okay. So that's where the match is.
Yep.
Okay, so the next show is Twisted Metal.
That's right.
Okay, my bad.
Yep.
July 2nd, 2011.
Yep.
Lowrider joins for Twisted Metal 5.
That's right, yep.
Wrestles Tim Justice, his cousin.
Yep.
So I guess that was just, because he's Tim's cousin.
Yep.
So.
And that was actually a really good match. I remember being really impressed by Lowe and Tim. Obviously Lowe was fresh at that point, and Tim had just done the one match against Dante, which was just a squash.
Yeah.
But I think they had the opening match, and they put on a really good match.
Almost reminiscent of the Mike Delcano, JD Flame match.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Just that fast pace. It was a very clean match,
with two relatively new guys.
Yeah, and it worked out really well just to have those fresh guys in there.
Yeah, I've got it written down. This is a great looking card, and
absolutely.
It's packed.
I think this show was probably one of my favourites in terms of the booking.
Yeah.
Like the lead up to it and then the show itself just worked out really well.
Yeah.
Because like I was saying before, we had all those different feuds leading up to this show.
Yeah.
And it really worked, I thought.
Yeah, we got, Dante versus Knuckles.
Yep.
Bambi, EQG, end of their feud. I think that's her last match.
Yep.
So, why did she leave?
I'm not sure, to be
Because
honest.
she and Eli were dating and he was doing pros, so she was going to just...
I don't know, it might have been something like that. I think she just came in to do the thing with El Queso Grande, to be honest. I don't think she planned to wrestle against anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So
just for a bit of fun.
I think so, yeah. And we got
enough.
a good storyline out of it.
So Three Dog defeats Mykonos.
Yep.
So Three Dog's the one to end his undefeated streak,
which I think was the plan all along, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Cool. So good stuff there.
Yep.
Once again, Chaos and Ice in an I Quit match.
Yeah, that was one of those matches that I think we did where there was nothing else for them to do, so we just put them together. I remember.
Sometimes that happens where you get to a certain point, you realise, oh shit.
Yeah.
Forgot about these two.
That's right, but I think with those guys, I wasn't too keen to put them together again at that point because they'd already had 3 or 4 matches, but there wasn't really anything else we could do with them. So because the whole feud with Dan had finished by that point, so that was really all we could do with them. And I think the winner of that match was going to be the number 1 contender for the ICWS title. So that was when Ice said I quit voluntarily and allowed Chaos the win so that he could face Dan and Clint. Yep.
I think I'm watching the recaps now and I'm like, oh, I want to be back there. I don't want to do schwa anymore. I hate pro wrestling. JD Flame comes back, beats Mike Delcano.
Yep, so they both came back.
Yep, so that's good.
Yep.
Good to have
JD
him back
finally got a win over Mike, which I think he'd been wanting for a long time.
I think deservedly so.
Yeah.
And then in the main event, Clint Marshall becomes the new face of the company.
Yep, so this was a pretty big moment.
Hardcore champion versus heavyweight champion.
Yep,
almost like Hogan versus Warrior.
Yeah, that's sort of what we were going for, I think. Just the 2 champions, I guess, both titles on the line, and Clint ends up being the undisputed champion, which was pretty cool.
Which you'd never done before and haven't done since.
That's right. So, I don't know if the plan all along was for him to hold both titles. I think he was always in line to beat Dan for the heavyweight title, but then he just happened to have the hardcore title at the same time. Yep. So we just went with both. But
I think that got match of the year. I can't remember.
I think so. I remember it being a really good match. They did a lot of really big moves. That was that the match with the tombstone onto the chair?
That was the next show.
That was the next show. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember that being a pretty.
That was
amazing spot. So.
Yeah. When I talked to Zibby in his podcast, he forgot that even happened. He's
really?
Like, oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next show is Winter Warfare.
Right.
I love this show, man. I love this show.
I wonder why.
Yeah, because I'd said on the thread I've done with pro wrestling. I'm not wrestling anymore. I'm done, guys.
Fair enough.
So I kept it a secret, but only you, DJ, and Dan knew.
That's right.
So this is August 28, 2011, just after I had my last match with Mike Massive in Schwa. So we had planned this return during your opening segment.
Yep.
Where you usually every show you open the show with what's happening.
I used to do that at every show, mostly for the DVD.
Yep.
As we went on, I tend to do that less and less, and I think we brought that back just for this show because of obviously you coming back.
Okay. So I got to your house maybe like 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
Make sure before anyone else got there, and I just stayed in your computer room all morning.
Yep.
And I changed my theme song as well, so no one knew who it was until it came out.
Yep.
But I just love when you say, and we're going to get on with our first match. And as you're walking off, acting like this is just the normal thing that's happening.
Yep.
And then the change of expression, like, what's going on here?
Yep.
My theme song hits.
Yep.
Out I come. What a response.
Yeah.
And then the ensuing back and forth with you and I was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a great way for you to come back, I think.
Yeah.
And that set up the whole you rising up the ladder.
Yeah.
Getting starting at the bottom and earning a shot at the ICWS title, which I think you're still waiting for, or you've had a title shot?
I got the title shot at Thug Life this year against Chaos.
After 4 years.
After all this time, I cut a promo mentioning all of this stuff.
Yep.
And saying how I never got the title shot.
Yep.
And then I ended up getting it. And now I'm back on the road to trying to get another one. So.
Fair enough.
But it's funny how something from back then is still prevalent in today's ICWS.
Well, it's sort of funny because I think in a way we sort of booked ourselves into a corner there because you'd already been the champion by that point, and we were looking at guys like Mike and Clint had just won the title, and then Mitch and those sort of guys getting their run at the top. So
so then it was getting to a point like, you can't go all this way and not win the title. So what are we going to do now?
It was sort of gotten to a corner a bit, I think. But then you went off and you had a run with the hardcore title.
Yeah.
So
I did some other things.
Yeah. So I think that was all sort of fitting into the bigger picture of the whole, rise from the bottom angle that we went with.
Okay. So that, I mean, for me, that's one of my favourite moments I've ever had.
Yep.
It's just that return.
Yeah.
Like I'd met some people like Tim before, but he knew who I was.
Yeah.
So he was like, "This is awesome."
Yeah.
It was really cool.
I remember Mike was filming and he was just going crazy, like behind the camera.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. Also on the show, what have we got here? Yeah, we got that 3-way.
Yep.
Between Zibby.
Yep.
Chaos and Dan.
So that was the
first falls for the hardcore title, second fall for the heavyweight title.
Yep. So again, that was another case of us doing something a little bit different, having a 2-fall match for both titles. I think Chaos won the first fall to win the hardcore title, so that was a way for us to get the hardcore belt off Clint. And then Clint came back to win the second fall and retain the ICWS title. So that worked out pretty well.
And obviously, he's the heavyweight champion now. I've got to get the belt off him.
I think so. Yeah.
It's a smart way to go about it, I think. Nothing else really too, noteworthy to really mention. I mean,
I think we were
all
just
good stuff, really.
Yeah, I think we were just sort of going along with the usual pace, I guess.
Yeah.
Doing the usual thing, really. At this point.
I wrestled EQG, which was really cool.
Yep, that's right.
I always wanted to wrestle EQG.
There you go.
Cold Day in Hell. October 16th, 2011. I think this is the only time we had 2 shows in the same month, because we did Halloween Hell on October 30th as well. So.
Yeah, I remember those two being quite close together.
Yeah, but Cold Day in Hell was a really, really good show.
I remember the irony about this is it was Cold Day in Hell, but it was about 35 degrees that day, so it was really bloody hot.
But this show is infamous for several things. The debuts of Ryan Tate and Alex Stone. So now the roster's packed. You got me back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got Lowrider and Tim Justice coming in. JD Flame and Delcano come back.
Yep.
Three Dog and Mykonos have settled in quite well now. So I do remember there was an idea that Alex Stone would walk away with the heavyweight title after the first event.
I remember that being raised.
There was an idea.
Yeah, I don't think we considered it seriously because Clint was sort of in the middle of his reign at that point.
Yeah.
So
I think it was just an idea thrown out there.
We might have considered it for the hardcore title because he ended up wrestling Chaos for the hardcore title in his debut.
That's right. Yeah.
So we might have considered that. But, obviously, we didn't end up doing it.
Yep, and I had a real barn burner with Low Rider.
Yep.
I think that was like the first time Low had a really good match before, so everyone was like, open their eyes to Low.
Yep.
And I think that was what I was kind of wanting to do with my matches, was have really good matches with the younger guys and make them look a bit better than what maybe they were at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
So all that's going down. Delcano becomes #1 contender.
Yep.
Clint Marshall defeats Knuckles to retain the championship.
I remember there being a bit of heat about that match because a few of the guys were a bit confused as to why Knuckles was getting a title shot.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember exactly who it was, but
someone must have.
Yeah.
And in the end, does it really matter?
Yeah, I think
he's a former champion. He's just getting a title shot.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those matches that we just sort of did. Like, there was no real build up to it. It was just, to be cool to put Clint and Knuckles in a match against each other. And, Clint was the champion, so we were like, well, okay, we'll just make it for the title then.
Yeah, just have him take on all challenges.
And that was one of Knuckles' best matches, I think, actually.
Yeah, without a doubt, for sure.
And, another example of Clint Marshall having great matches with anyone he wrestles. So.
Yeah. Would you say Alex Stone, in his debut, just a natural, good on the microphone?
Oh, absolutely. That first promo he did was really cool. And that really set the tone, I think, for the whole Alex Stone run in the ICWS.
Yeah.
I think we had a few missed opportunities with Alex because, he was sort of... He got injured at one point, and
he's always had a nagging knee injury.
Yeah, and at one point he won the tag titles by himself, and then we were going to do some stuff with that, but didn't do much. So we could have done more with him, I think, and obviously he went on to become a big player in WCWA, which is what he could have been in ICWS. Yeah. But these things happen sometimes.
Yeah. Ryan Tate in about 45 seconds against Wicked Nick James.
Yep.
And what was his last match till this year?
That's right.
But for what it was, the crowd were going nuts.
Yeah.
And, good on Ryan for his first match.
Yeah, because that match was something that I think we just came up with on the spot.
Because he just come along to watch it.
That's right. And then Nick happened to be there, and we asked him, "Oh, do you want to do a match against Ryan?" And Nick was like, "Yeah, sure." And we were like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So we did the match, and it was a quick match, I think, because Nick didn't want to wrestle too much.
Yeah.
But I thought it worked really well.
And I remember hearing Nick after the match say to Ryan, "We should have done more."
Yeah.
But in the end, I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Just the way that match unfolded.
And just a chance for Nick to get one more win, I guess.
Yeah. So what's with the decision to align Dan Zeplin with Tim Justice? I know Dan, in his podcast, mentioned the whole plan was for them to split up pretty soon after and Dan turned heel.
That's right. So it was basically the same thing that we did with Dan and Nick in the Carnage Crew. And I think at one point Dan actually wanted to bring Nick in and actually make it like Carnage Crew version 2.
Yeah.
But obviously that never ended up happening. But yeah, I think Dan sort of came up with the whole idea because he wanted to team with Tim from pretty much when Tim started as something to do after he lost the title.
Okay.
And then, it basically just evolved from there.
Okay.
But, same with the Carnage Crew. The plan all along was for, I guess, the more experienced guy to turn on the younger guy, and then the younger guy would eventually get the win over him.
Yep. So we get to Halloween Hell, 2011, October 30th, 2011. The Mike Delcano, Clint Marshall feud really begins at this show.
Yep.
They had done a little bit here and there with the hardcore title earlier in the year.
I think they did a promo at Cold Day in Hell as well to set up that match.
Okay. From what I gather, Delcano's lobbying to win the belt behind the scenes. Do you remember too much of that?
He probably was, but I think the plan would have been for Mike to win it from Clint sort of anyway, regardless of that, because obviously Mike had started before Clint, and yet Clint won the title first, so it only seemed fair that Mike should win it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the plan all along was for Mike to eventually beat Clint for the title. And I think, was this around the time when he did the feud with me as well, where he attacked me? And,
I think he was doing a few things.
And locked me in the sharpshooter.
Yeah.
So, and then that was the whole where I was on Clint's side, and then Mike.
Yeah.
Because they did the match at Halloween Hell where Clint beat him, and then Mike pinned him afterwards and acted like he'd won.
Yeah.
And then took the title away.
That was this show. Yeah.
And I remember working with Mike at the time on that storyline.
Yeah.
And the way I pitched it to him was that Mike would be the CM Punk of backyard wrestling, because this was around the time when CM Punk did that whole thing with John Cena.
Yeah.
So that was sort of what we were going for.
Mm-hmm.
So basically Mike would go away and then threaten to take away the title and then threaten to not come back.
Yep.
And then, of course, he would come back and beat Clint to become the official champion, I guess.
Yep.
And, that's sort of how that all worked out.
How that all worked.
Yeah.
Lots of different things happening on the show. JD Flame and Declan Diamond in their feud-ending match wasn't a very good match. I think that was just goes to show what Justin's attitude was at the time. He didn't care, and he said that on his podcast too, that he didn't care.
Okay, I remember it being a pretty decent match, to be honest.
Also on the show, I wrestled Tim Justice.
Yep.
In a match people probably didn't expect to see Tim do, which was a really good match.
Yeah, that was a good match.
And then later in the show, I beat Knuckles.
Yep.
In my second match of the day.
So that was where we were supposed to do Knuckles versus Dante.
That was Dante.
Part 2.
That was the Dante
Yep.
thing. Okay.
And then you came out instead.
Yeah. Okay.
I remember you being really happy with that, how that worked out as well. How you beat Tim and then Knuckles, like two completely different wrestlers on one show.
Yeah, I was kind of going for my Bret Hart King of the Ring moment where he had two separate matches against two different people.
Yep.
I think he had Razor Ramon and Bam Bam Bigelow or something like that on the
Yeah.
same show, and I wanted to do that
Yep.
kind of thing. Big Bret Hart mark, I must say. Obviously I didn't want to beat Knuckles flat out,
Yep.
so that's why I went with the small package.
That's right.
Yep. But yeah, it says Creed offered himself as a replacement for Dante, who was scheduled to face but didn't show up.
Fair enough.
Okay, Seasons Beatings, 2011.
All right.
The Radical Movement forms at this show.
Yes.
I know this was a GBYWN thing, so why... You said earlier you didn't really pay too much attention to the GBYWN thing,
Yep.
but why was this brought in? Was it because Delcano and the guys felt strongly about...
I think so. I think, from what I remember, it was Mike who pushed for it quite strongly, and he wanted to put himself in that position as the leader, I guess, of the radical movement.
Yeah.
And then we decided that Justin and Mitch would be involved as well because they were doing the whole body spray thing at that point.
Yeah.
So that seemed like a fairly natural fit.
Yeah.
And then obviously they would sort of feud against me for control of the company.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if we ever really elaborated on that too much on that storyline because obviously what happened later, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I was pretty happy to go along with it. I don't know if DJ was involved in that at that point. But yeah, that seemed like the next big thing to do because at that point we'd done the XCW invasion, then we'd done a year of sort of storylines here and there, but nothing really big, sort of encompassing the whole federation. So I guess the radical movement was for us the next big thing.
Okay, gotcha.
I think even at one point we were talking about having like a full, like everyone in the Fed would be involved, like everyone would pick either the radical movement side or the ICWS side.
So that was an idea.
I think so. Yeah. Obviously, we never got around to doing it, but
yeah,
that would have been cool if we'd done it.
Yep. Also on this show, me and Declan go out there and have a really good match after Nick's 2 cents.
That's right.
So I did not mention this earlier, but memories of Nick's 2 cents being a segment on the show.
Yeah, that was really awesome. Just a great way to keep Nick involved in the show after he'd stopped wrestling.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first one or the second one?
I think it was the second one.
Right, but that was the one that really made Nick's 2 cents like an important part of the show.
Yeah.
And I think that show really resurrected DJ's career as well at that point, because he was just coming off that match against Justin, which he wasn't too happy about.
Yeah.
And then he did the Nick's 2 cents segment and the match against you, which was really awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that really sort of, I guess, brought back the passion for him.
Yeah, and really, I can't think maybe like amplified his character back up.
Yeah.
Oh, like maybe now everyone's noticing him again.
That's right, yeah.
What was happening with Justin.
So that was really cool. I was really happy for him to be doing that.
Yep. So going forward, that's... Yep, Del Cano wins the championship.
Yep.
Chaos retains the hardcore title. Low and Three Dog have a really good match.
They had a really good feud, actually.
Yeah.
That one spread out over 4 or 5 shows, and that worked really well.
Yeah. One of those like cool little mid-card feuds going on.
And again, it's one of those feuds where, you just stick 2 guys together, which, Three Dog and Low don't really have much to do with each other, and you end up getting a really good feud out of it.
Yeah. Were you at this time getting a little bit overwhelmed with all the new guys coming in, and shows were now having like 7 or 8 matches as opposed to like 5?
I think I was still enjoying it at this point, just because you have all these fresh new guys to work with, and it was quite fun to come up with storylines for them.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was just finishing my first year of uni, so that wasn't really overwhelming yet.
Yep.
So I was having a lot of fun at that point, I think.
Cool. So let's get to February 5th, 2012, Aussie Anarchy 2.
Yep.
Dante Daniels' last match.
Yep.
Backyard Wrestling against me.
Yep.
So once again, as we were talking about earlier, frustrating. Can't keep him involved.
Yep. But we got him back for one more show.
Got him back for one more. So that happened. We've got Declan and Knuckles defeating Dan and Tim.
Yep.
So once again, now I'm bringing up for the second time the idea of the tag team division.
Yeah, and I think at that point we were moving. I think we were planning to do a tournament to crown the first tag team champions, and I think that match was originally going to be part of the tournament, but then because we wanted Radical Movement and SPWS involved as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think that ended up working out, and then we just did a match.
Well, I was going to team with Nick James.
That's right. We were going to do a show where it was entirely the tag team tournament.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
But for whatever reason, couldn't. I think maybe it's just scheduling conflicts. We couldn't get people.
I don't think we could get all the people that we wanted there in time.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a lot of talk about who was going to team with who and all that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that was always a really fun part of it,
Yeah.
like figuring out what the tag teams are going to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I've just remembered the first Nick's 2 cents was me and him at Halloween Hell.
That's right, yeah.
And I pitched to him that we should be a tag team.
That's right, yeah.
I don't know why, I just felt very strongly that would be a very entertaining duo.
Yeah. Didn't go anywhere, I guess.
No. So the main event is Mike Delcano defeating Dark Ice.
Yep.
Chaos is the hardcore champion.
Yep.
It seemed like Chaos always got the thing before Ice got the thing, kind of thing. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Is Chaos preferred over Ice at this stage?
Not deliberately, I think.
Because it seemed like he got the hardcore title, then Ice got it.
Well, at that point, I think at that point they were co-champions, weren't they?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so they were both sort of defending it together. I don't think it was... I mean, we certainly didn't deliberately go out of our way to, put Chaos in the main event and not Ice, so...
Yeah.
I think that was just the way things worked out. But I do remember at one point Dark Ice was on a pretty big losing streak. Like, he lost about 4 or 5 matches in a row.
Yeah.
And he started to get a bit upset about it, so we sort of had to, find a way for him to start winning again.
Yeah.
But,
sometimes it's just how the cookie crumbles.
That's right, yeah. Sometimes, you just have a streak of, 3 or 4 shows where you're not doing much. And, it's not a deliberate thing, it's just the way it works.
Okay, I just wanted to see if it was.
Yes. No, definitely not.
Okay. So ICWS Insurgents,
Yep.
March 25th, 2012. The ICWS Rising Star Cup.
Yes.
Whose idea is this? And it went really well from what I remember. The match was actually quite good between the four.
I can't remember exactly where the idea came from. It might have been me, but
Because the winner would get a briefcase and they could challenge for any title.
that's right. So it's kind of like a Money in the Bank sort of thing.
Yeah.
So Alex Stone ended up winning it, and I don't know if we knew at this point exactly what we were going to do with Alex, like which title he was going to win.
Yeah.
I think because we didn't end up doing it for a long time, and then we were sort of thinking like, how are we going to fit this in?
Yeah. Well, on his podcast, he did mention that the going idea was he would cash it in on the heavyweight title.
Right.
But the first idea that was pitched was that he would cash it in but lose. And
Right.
Alex is like, how about we don't do that? Let's wait until I can win something.
I think so. Yeah. I think it was always going to be like the hardcore or the tag team
Yeah.
titles, because Mike was the heavyweight champion at that point, and he was feuding with Clint.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I can't remember exactly where all that came from, but
And I think this is where Alex's frustrations were coming in.
right.
But,
But I do remember this was the match that started his feud with Ryan.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be a really good feud as
yeah,
well.
it was really good.
And that really lifted Ryan, I think, to a whole new level.
Yeah, I think because he'd come in,
Yeah.
he hadn't done too much, just had matches, but
That's
now
right.
he was really
Yep.
showing his personality.
And I remember Ryan doing a lot of promos for that feud as well, which really impressed me.
Yeah.
Like that he was really dedicated. Before every show he would do a feud, do a rivalry promo.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for. Promo about Alex Stone wanting to get back at him and
Yeah.
all this stuff. Even if he was wrestling someone else, like he would keep the focus on his rivalry with Alex, which I thought was really cool.
Okay, cool. Also at Insurgents, Mykonos beats Dark Ice. Instead of talking about Dark Ice, I want to talk about Mykonos. It seems like his win-loss record is so good at this stage. He hadn't lost too many matches. I think he lost against Volcano, lost against Three Dog, but he hadn't lost too many matches. Was that because you were protecting him to be built as a bigger deal in the future?
I don't know if we did that deliberately, again. Again, it's just one of those things that I think that's how it works out sometimes.
Yep.
I think we knew that Mitch would probably be next in line to get the title from Mike, because, again, we knew that with the whole radical movement thing, we would eventually break them up and have Mitch beat Mike for the title.
So that was always an idea.
I think so, yeah.
But at the moment, the radical movement's flying high.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They were going well.
So, speaking of radical movement, you have a lot of back and forth promos against them. I think they did an X2 Cents where they came out wearing suits and stuff.
Yep.
Were you enjoying that dynamic as opposed to the dynamic between me and you in 2010?
Yep. I was, but obviously we were building up to what would eventually happen at Twisted Metal 6, so that had sort of been an idea for a while.
Yeah.
So really, I guess it was just going with the flow until we got to the big show and then did the big heel turn, which we'll get to soon.
Yes, we will, because I believe... Where are we? Is that Insurgents? Yes. So, April 28, 2012, Twisted Metal 6.
Alright, here we go.
Okay, so this is just what I've been doing. Each Twisted Metal I've been running down every card with you.
Yep, that's cool.
I'll skim through everything else, but Twisted Metal's really important.
Yep.
So to start things off with, while I go grab another beer.
Yep.
Alex Stone defeats Ryan Tate.
Yep.
This is the first match of their feud.
First one-on-one, yep.
Yeah, so his briefcase was on the line because I think he cheated to win it.
That's right, yep.
But your thoughts on how Alex and Ryan have been going since their debut up to this point?
Yeah, I thought they were going really well. They were having good matches, not just against each other, but against other guys as well. Alex was playing the whole charismatic heel role well, and Ryan was doing the babyface role really well as well. So, yeah, I thought both those guys just worked really well together, and it was again one of those feuds where you just put two guys together and it just works.
Yeah,
like they can make a really good story out of it, and because I think they did a street fight at the next show as well, which was where Ryan finally beat Alex.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Because at that, I think initially the feud was about obviously Alex cheating to win the briefcase and then Ryan wanting to win it. And then it reached a point where, Ryan was so pissed off with Alex that he didn't even care about the briefcase. He just wanted to beat the shit out of Alex, and that's where they did the street fight. So, yeah, I thought that worked really well.
Yeah, very good. So, also infamous on this show is a WZWA Championship match.
That's right.
Between Jack Wallace and Antilochus.
Yep.
Little did we know what that would end up becoming.
Well, absolutely.
Eventually, but... was Dan again the one that made the contact with them?
Probably.
So
that's a pretty safe assumption, I think.
Yeah. So that takes place. What were your thoughts on seeing these young guys of Jack and Antilochus come in? And considering we already had quite a stacked roster, was there really any space for them?
To be honest, probably not. And this was around the point where I started to feel that. We were getting like a lot of these guys in to ICWS, and I guess the whole face of ICWS was changing a little bit.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't the guys that I went to school with anymore. It was all these other guys that.
That's one thing I did want to bring up.
Right. So we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought they were pretty good. I thought they were a bit raw at the time and probably needed to work a little bit on their wrestling skills. But for two young guys, I thought they were pretty good. They were probably better at that point in their careers than some of the ICWS guys were at the same point in their careers.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think at that point there were just so many guys there that it was really hard to fit two more guys in and find stuff for them to do.
Yeah. Is this where it starts to get a little overwhelming?
I think so. I think when I don't think there was any one point where it became overwhelming. I think it was just like a build-up over time where, you've got all these guys like Alex and Ryan and Jack and Antilochus, and, you start to think, man, what am I going to do with all these guys?
Yeah.
Like, it does get hard.
That's crazy, yeah. So I want to ask about the identity of ICWS slowly but surely maybe not being what it once was.
That's right.
How did that make you feel? You still had Knuckles, you still had DJ.
Yep.
You still had Dan Zeplin.
Yep.
Still had those guys.
Yep.
But is it starting to feel like it's no longer what it once was, and now it's become this big thing when it was really just supposed to be this thing with friends?
I think so, and I guess that was one of the things that led to me eventually losing interest in ICWS, just because you have all these other guys coming in that you only really see through wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, guys like DJ and Eli and Knuckles, I would hang out with outside of wrestling.
Yeah.
Whereas, guys like Jack and Ryan, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So,
you're dealing with all these different personalities. And
yeah. I didn't mind the personality side of it so much because most of the guys are, good guys and pretty easy to work with.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it does feel like, it started out as this small thing with a bunch of friends, and now it's this big thing with all these
other
coming
guys,
in. Yeah, coming in from all over the place, and it does get a bit hard to manage, I think.
Yeah. Especially when it's like your house and you got to have all these guys there, and
yeah, guys that you don't really know that well either. So,
yeah. So from there, 3-Dog and Low Rider in a Falls Count Anywhere match. I think this might have been the end of the feud.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but yeah, once again, a neat little mid-card feud.
Yeah.
Which helped them.
Yeah, I always like those mid-card feuds where
Yeah.
you find, something really good for guys like Three Dog and Lowe to do, sort of, that doesn't involve, like, championships and moving up the card or whatever.
Yeah, that was one thing I was always impressed with you, is that you still found something for them to do. Even if it was something small, for them it felt like it was a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's how you build guys up over time to become, guys like Mike and Clint, where you're the champion and you're the face of the ICWS.
Yeah.
I think that's how it all starts out, really.
Yeah, got to do little things, just baby steps until you make those big steps.
It's just a shame the ICWS didn't go long enough for guys like Three Dog and Lowe to reach the same spot.
To see where they would end up ascending
to reach the same spot that Mike and Clint got to, for example.
So the next match, the Radical Movement of JD Flame and Mykonos become the first ever tag team champions by beating Dan and Tim.
Yep.
I believe after the match, Dan turns on Tim.
Yep.
So the big heel turn on Tim happens. So
which was the first time Dan had been heel in about 3 or 4 years, I think.
Okay.
So that was a pretty big deal.
So it's about time that he did something a bit different.
Yep.
But you brought in the tag team titles. You think that, in hindsight, you had an idea of what the tag titles were going to be like, but then it didn't end up quite being like that because of the issues of keeping enough tag teams to keep it interesting.
I think so. It felt like at the time that we had enough people to make it work, but as we went on, because I think it was around this time that some of the guys like Mike and Clint and Mitch were focused, because they were in Year 12 at the time, so they were focusing on their studies and exams and all that stuff, so they weren't able to make every show.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of made it hard for the tag team division to really take off in the way that we thought it might.
Yeah.
So,
which is...
But, that's the way it works out sometimes.
Yeah.
But at least we gave it a go, and it worked for a little while. Like, we had that match, and then there was the match where SPWS won the titles from the Radical Movement.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Alright, so after that, Knuckles and Dark Ice have this cracker of a match. So I think it'll go down maybe as one of his best matches.
Yeah, and there's an interesting story behind this match, because I wanted Dark Ice to win, because I think this was at the point where he was losing quite a lot.
Yeah.
But DJ and Knuckles, for whatever reason, really wanted Knuckles to win. And this is the only time it's ever happened, but Knuckles actually messaged me saying, "Look, Chris, I really want to win this match." Like, because he's kind of like Clint, he doesn't really care about wins and losses all that much, but this was the one match where he really wanted to win.
Really?
Yeah. So,
well, that's something new. I never knew that.
Yeah, so I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, but...
Well, I remember at the time, DJ, when I had started my feud with SPWS at this show.
Yep.
But my initial idea was that I lose a match to Dark Ice.
Right.
And DJ said, no.
Okay.
If you're going to lose to anyone, it's Chaos. You're not losing to Ice. And
okay.
I don't know why that's such a big deal, but okay. So I think maybe at the time, DJ and Ice were not getting along very well.
Yeah, I remember that.
So then from there, me and Chaos go out there. I lose my first match since returning for the hardcore title. So it's a double choke slam from him and Ice.
Yep.
So great match there, and the start off of a new character change for me.
That's right. And you had a pretty good feud with him as well, from what I remember.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of it.
That lasted for the rest of the year, I think, as well.
Yeah.
When Dan came in and...
Yeah, Dan joined, and then... Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That worked out really well.
Alright, so let's get to this 30-minute Iron Man match.
I
think this one match of the year as well. So like Clint Marshall consistently is getting match of the year.
Yeah, that's right.
So here we go. Delcano, Clint Marshall. I'm actually the referee for the match.
Yep.
So I got the best seat in the house. So whose idea is it for you to turn heel and join Radical Movement?
Well, before I talk about that, I'll talk about the Iron Man match itself. So this was something that I think I'd always wanted to do. Like, have two guys just go out and wrestle for 30 minutes straight.
Mm-hmm.
And up until this time, we hadn't really been in a situation where we could do it. Like, maybe you and Dan could have done it in 2010 with the XCW thing. But apart from that, we'd never really been in a situation where...
You could trust two guys?
Yeah, where you could have two guys that could pull it off.
Yeah.
And I think at that time, we had Mike and Clint, and, the way the storyline worked out, it seemed right. And... They went out and had this amazing match, and it worked out perfectly, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this is what I did. I did a 30-minute Iron Man in 2004.
That's right.
And I was like, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, Good on them, that.
Yeah.
And they just blew the house off.
Yeah,
that was great.
That was a really great match.
And your heel turn.
All right.
So you've done your GM thing for some time now.
Yep.
Are you feeling like I want to do something a bit different?
I think so. Because, it's more fun to be a bad guy.
It is, man, it is.
So I'd sort of been the babyface GM for pretty much the whole time.
Since 2007.
Pretty much. So I guess for me, I wanted this to be a big moment. I didn't really want the focus to be all about me. Like, I wanted it to be sort of, I guess, part of the bigger radical movement storyline where, I've been feuding against them and then suddenly I turn heel and join them.
Yep.
But yeah, like the way it worked out with the Iron Man match, like it goes to a draw and then I come out as the special guest referee, and then Clint goes for a pin and I count 2 and then stop, and everyone's like, what the hell? And then the radical movement comes in and just beats the shit out of Clint, and then I count 3 and raise Mike's hand as the champion. So
I thought it was just well booked.
Yeah. I was really happy with the way it turned out, and I got the chance to be heel, which, as I said, was something I wanted to do for a long time. And I guess and I guess also it was a way to build up the next guy as well, because now you've got like the champion and the general manager sort of on the same side as heels.
Yeah.
So then for the next babyface to come up and sort of beat them, which turned out to be Mitch.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good way to really build up Mitch as the next champion.
Yeah, and I think, from there you were getting rave reviews of being a heel. You were such a good heel. It's like immediate. It's like you'd already done it before and you knew how to do it, but you were doing so well.
I had 5 years practice to get it right. So.
All right, so let's get to the next show.
All right.
I think this is the best show in ICWS history, in my opinion. Radical Movement.
It'd be this or Twisted Metal 6, I think. They were both really good shows.
Really, really good. And we were on a complete high at this stage.
Yeah.
WCW hadn't even started yet.
Yeah.
But ICWS was the focus.
This was the peak, I think.
Yeah. For the first time ever, Dan Zeplin wrestles Knuckles.
Yeah, this was awesome. This, again, was a match that we'd wanted to do for a long time. And finally, we got to do it. Obviously, Knuckles had sort of come back permanently, so we were able to put them together in a match, and they had a really good match. I know Dan really enjoyed this match.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
it was a
Knuckles
great
did as
opener.
Well. Yeah. So, it was really awesome to finally get a chance to do that match. And that was the great thing about Knuckles' last run in the ICWS, was that we were able to put him in these matches that we'd always wanted to do, but because he'd never been around for that long, we could never do them.
Yeah.
And now we could, put him against guys like Dan and Clint and Mike and,
cool.
and Dark Ice and do all those matches that we'd always wanted to.
Yeah.
So that was really awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So, as the card goes down, it's just a very solid show. Nick Ariel has his one match in ICWS since the XCW ICWS thing.
Yep, he randomly came back for one show.
Yeah, and he was supposed to stick around, but he just never came back, so
fair enough.
My bad.
That's all right.
I shouldn't have tried to get him involved, but I really wanted him involved.
Yeah, I guess he was a bit like Dante Daniels in that he sort of did one match and then
went away.
Never really came back.
Went away.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing too much. I mean, I win the hardcore title over Ice, but because Chaos is also the co-champion, I've got to beat him as well.
That's right. Yep.
That's all good. But the main event, oh man, what a match. Mike Del Cano versus Tim Justice for the heavyweight championship.
This is one of my favourites.
What a great moment, man, because I thought, I was fooled. I thought they won the title and that was going to happen.
So Tim beats Mike, pins him 1, 2, 3, and everyone thinks Tim's the champion.
Yeah.
And then I come out and say, because Dan interfered and hit Mike with a steel chair, that means Mike wins by DQ and he's still the champion. And that was really awesome.
Yeah, the heat that it got was like,
The way that whole thing panned out that could not have been any better.
Yeah, and the fact that Tim had never won a match at this stage.
That's right, yeah.
And I sat there and I was like, you know what? If that actually is the decision and Tim's the champion, I'm cool with that. I think that's really good for him. Like, he never won a match, but when he got the title shot, he won. But that's just the swerve of him being DQ'd in the end.
And I think the build-up as well, because Mike and Tim did a promo before that where, I think Tim came out and wanted a title match against Mike, and Mike was like, no, you're shit, you've never won a match. And then he ends up accepting it, and then, Tim beats him, and then it turns out that it's a DQ finish. So.
Yeah. So I can tell here when I'm looking at the results that maybe you're starting to get overwhelmed because Young Wolves Rising is the next show.
Yep.
You haven't even written up. You know, you usually write up the whole results of the whole show.
Right.
But you've just written down who won what, and that was it.
Okay. Yep.
So maybe this stage you're starting to get a little bit
Yep.
overwhelmed with it.
Yep.
But you know, another good show. And yeah, nothing too noteworthy to mention here. It's just some good matches, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think that was the show when Mike had 2 title matches, wasn't it? One against Red Dog and one against you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But he lost to me by DQ.
Yeah, and that was it also that show where
SPWS beat them for the takeover.
That's right, and then they broke up, and then Mitch basically did the face turn to set up him versus Mike at the next show.
Yeah.
For the title. Yeah, that's right.
So all that goes down.
Yep.
I don't go to the next show. I think I wasn't well that day. But Day of Destiny.
Yep.
Are you starting to lose your passion?
I think so. Simply because, like we said before, the identity of the ICWS was changing a bit. I was getting a bit overwhelmed with finding stuff for the guys to do, and I think by that point, for me personally, I'd done nearly all I'd wanted to do with the ICWS as well. Like I'd, done the heel turn and sort of had my own stable with Radical Movement. Clint and Mike had their big runs with the title and all that sort of stuff. So I think at that point, it was just more a case of feeling like I'd done everything I wanted to do. There were still a few more things that I wanted to do, like I wanted to be a manager for someone, which I ended up doing for Knuckles for one show.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a storyline where basically I tried to shut down the ICWS, and then the young guys would rise up and basically
overthrow you.
Pretty much, yeah. So
we did get to do that where we all carried you out of the arena.
Yeah, so that was kind of born out of that, but
yeah,
I would have liked to do a much bigger storyline out of that, maybe with the Radical Movement involved as well.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it just didn't really turn out at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, from Day of Destiny, do we get to seasons? Yeah, seasons. No, Halloween Hell. Sorry, getting ahead of myself here. So at this stage, WCWA has started.
That's right.
So we were doing one. At this stage, actually 2 shows a month.
Right.
Because we were doing both ICWS and WCWA, so that's a lot for all of us.
Yep. And I think this was also the first show where I stopped booking, or at least being heavily involved in it.
Really?
I think Halloween Hell was mostly DJ and Dan booking it.
Okay. Well, I beat Chaos.
Yep.
Dan defeated Dynamo. You got some of the WCWA guys now on the card.
Yep.
But yeah, things are going along. But now we're back at those heavyweight title matches where it's just Mykonos defending against someone.
That's right. Yeah.
So we've gone from a very heavily involved storyline with Delcano as champion now Mykonos.
Yeah.
How did you feel Mykonos was going as champion?
I thought he was going fairly well. I thought he could do with maybe a storyline to sort of tie everything together, because obviously Mike had the whole Radical Movement thing.
Yeah.
Dan had the whole XCW thing, so I think he could have benefited from having that really big storyline for the title to really, I guess, cement his legacy as a champion. But generally, I thought he was going pretty well.
Yeah.
He was having good matches. He had a good match against Three Dog. He had another good match against Clint Marshall at Seasons Beatings, which was, I think DJ originally booked that show, and then he didn't turn up on the day, so I ended up booking it because we had to rejig some of the card, and I ended up doing Mitch versus Clint in the main event because Clint had never got his rematch from Twisted Metal 6, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I guess by this point it was more DJ and Dan running the show, and I was more a consultant, I guess, than really actively involved in setting things up.
So was there a conversation that took place where you were saying, I'm burned out, you guys got to take
Yeah,
it
there was. I think it was after Day of Destiny, I put a post up saying that I wanted to sort of step aside and let someone else take over. But then I guess there was a for a period of time, I never really fully sort of let go. And,
Yeah.
Like, you know, Halloween Hell, DJ and Dan did most of it, and then I came back for Seasons Beatings, and then we did the In Your Yard tapings,
Yeah.
where I was, I think, involved in that as well.
Yeah.
But then, I think it took a while for me to really sort of step aside. And I guess part of that was because I was hoping that someone else would sort of step in and really, I guess, take control of the booking or the running of the shows. And I felt like no one really did that.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you know, DJ's sort of doing that now, but at the time, I felt that didn't really happen.
You felt like your shoes hadn't been filled properly yet.
Yeah, I guess so, and I don't mean that in an arrogant sort of way, like, you know, oh, no one could be as good as me. I mean that in more, you know, because I did quite a lot. I was involved quite a lot in running the shows, like, and not just booking, but things like, you know, setting up the base and organising dates and that sort of stuff. And I really wanted someone else to sort of step in and fill that role.
Do all that,
and it didn't seem like anyone really wanted to, which is understandable because it's hard work.
Yeah, it is a pain.
Yeah.
Alright, so Delcano did leave after his match at Day of Destiny.
He did for a little while. I think he came back.
I think
for
he
one
came
more.
back for a little thing.
But
I just want to know your thoughts on Delcano's influence on the history of ICWS.
I think Mike, out of all the guys I've worked with, is one of my favourites because he was really good to discuss like storylines with. Like, I felt that he understood my style of booking and where I wanted to go with the ICWS more than anyone else. And like with the whole radical movement thing, and when he first won the title, like we had a lot of conversations about how that should play out. And you know, he had one idea, I had a different idea, and then we would sort of talk about it and come up with something that we were both happy with. Yeah. So I thought Mike was. I found Mike one of the best guys to work with out of everyone.
Okay. Okay, just going forward here. 2013 begins.
Yep.
We do the In Your Yard tapings. I guess it's you're just trying to format the shows in a way that's different to what we used to do.
Yeah, so obviously we've been doing the monthly shows for a long time, and I think at this point we'd been doing like recaps for the shows on YouTube, and I wanted to do a different format where we did like a full episode sort of format.
Yep. And
have like, you know, have like a TV show sort of format. So sort of like what we originally intended with the first few Twisted Metal events.
Yeah.
So that was the plan.
The plan was to change the game.
I think so, and you know, include more promos and storylines and stuff like that, and really bring them to the centre. But for whatever reason, it didn't really work out. I think we did one taping, and then
we did one taping of 2 episodes, and then we were going to do another one and another one before we got to Twisted Metal.
That's right.
And then we were going to do more until Season Speeding.
That's right. Yeah. So that was the format we were aiming for. But we did the first one, and then I think that was around the time when Mum and Dad started renovating the backyard and putting the new shed in.
Okay, that's right. We couldn't do a show for a while because of the shed.
That's right. So so that sort of stopped us from doing any more shows for a while, and then I don't think we did another show until about September when we did Twisted Metal 7.
We just did straight up Twisted Metal.
Yeah, that's right.
I think, you know, I haven't got the card on here. The card's not there.
Okay.
There were no real storylines involved on that show because we obviously hadn't had the chance to do that.
I think we had a couple of things, like there was Knuckles' last match against DJ, which is another one of my personal favourites.
That was amazing, yeah.
That was a match that I wanted to do. Like, when Knuckles was eventually going to leave, I wanted his last match to be against DJ. And that's how it worked out, and it was awesome.
Yeah. I did want to quickly talk about the possibility of you being the manager of Knuckles before this happened. I believe, I don't know what, it was the In Your Yard tapings maybe, where
it was.
You managed him against Ryan Tate.
That's right. So we did the thing at Halloween Hell where I came out and cut that promo saying no one had told me about the show, and you know, ICWS was going to hell and all this stuff, and then all the other guys came out and Ryan Tate basically told me to go away. Yeah. And then they ended up carrying me out, and I think you were carrying me, and you were like, you were sort of making fun of me
because you were like, because you're totally in your character, and you were like, what what are you doing? And I'm like, unhand me, unhand me at once.
Yeah.
Like making fun of you, like the kings getting...
you can't do this. Oh, yes, we can.
You can't do this. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But yeah, really cool segment. And we're all laughing as we're carrying you to the back and you're flailing, no, you can't do this to me.
And in hindsight, that would have been a great way to finish my run in ICWS. Like, you know, me being carried, kicking and screaming out of the Z Arena. But as it turns out, I came back for one more show where I was managing Knuckles, so Knuckles just, I guess, randomly turned heel. He happens to be wrestling Brian Tate, who would sort of started the feud against me. So that all sort of worked out pretty well. So I got to manage Knuckles, which again was something that I'd always wanted to do. I would have liked to go further with that, but obviously with not doing any more shows for a while, we didn't really get a chance to take that any further.
And from there, I think the next show was January 2014, Aussie Anarchy.
Yep.
You were there because it was Rusty.
I was there, yeah. I was at the show.
Unfortunately, the thing happened. But I had pitched an idea to you where, because Knuckles was leaving, then you could manage me.
Yep.
And because of the past history,
yep,
where I tried to destroy the ICWS, that I would be your guy, your hired gun.
Yeah, and that was sort of in line with what I'd sort of thought about like a year earlier.
Yeah.
With the whole, you know, Chris Zeplin tries to destroy the ICWS, and then the young guys rise up and throw him out. Yeah, and I thought that would have been really cool to have me and you as a team. Yeah, definitely. And I also thought it'd be cool if like DJ joined with us. Definitely.
Like, so you got like two of the originals, and you know one of the guys that tried to kill the company beforehand. Yeah, I thought that would have been a really cool dynamic. Yeah, but didn't happen. Nope. And the end of the show, we were supposed to have Rusty versus Dan Zeplin in a death match. Yep. Within moments, the neighbours weren't happy with the sound of a light tube breaking, and they thought that someone had broken a window in their house, which wasn't the case.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah,
it's kind of strange because they'd always been okay with us having shows before. Like maybe once or twice they'd sort of, if we'd like touch the fence, then they would sort of say, "Oh, you don't touch the fence." Yeah. But at that show, they just went completely off their face,
mental. Yeah. And so that was a bit of a shame.
Yeah, and that sort of killed having shows at the Z Arena, really.
Yeah, that killed what we were hoping to rejuvenate ICWS.
And what a shame for Rusty as well, like to fly all that way and then, you know, to not even get his match against Dan, which we wanted to do for so many years. And
you must have just been astounded to see Rusty step into the zone.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
He just must be like, oh my god, like, I remember this guy from years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so we did have him the day before at the WCWA show. Yep. Yeah, that was really good. Yep. I got to wrestle him, which was cool. Yep. He wrestled DJ on the Friday night. We did a backyard TV show on that night, so DJ got to wrestle him. Yep. So, you know, that comes to pretty much your end of your allegiance. What's the word? Involvement with ICWS. So, before I get to the nitty gritty of that stuff, what did you think of WCWA?
I thought seeing what WCWA turned into was, I thought, really awesome, and I thought it was what I wanted the ICWS to be. In a way, I was kind of disappointed to see how, you know, a lot of the guys were really into the storylines and angles of WCWA, whereas maybe in ICWS not so much. So, I mean, obviously I was happy for them to be doing so well in WCWA, but, you know, I couldn't help but feel that, you know, this is what the ICWS could have been if we kept going with it. Yeah. But, you know, obviously WCWA had the ring and the lighting and the fireworks, and you know, it was kind of a step up from, you know, what we've been doing with the base and daytime shows in the ICWS. So, okay. I think that was fair enough. Yeah. I mean, did anything ever inside you ever feel, I'd love to be involved in some way? I think a little part of me would have liked to be involved. I think by that point I was pretty burned out from the whole booking backyard wrestling thing, so I was pretty happy to just step back and let you and whoever else sort of run the show in WCWA. But it would have been cool to come over and, you know, maybe make a guest appearance or something, or, you know, reform the radical movement or something like that. Yeah. But which was one of my ideas. I mean, I always kept in the back of my mind, at some point I've got to try and find a way to fit Chris in, even if it's just for one appearance.
I think the first one was we were doing a War Games match.
That's
It was
right,
the
yep.
Elite Alliance
Yep.
against the Stone Army.
That's right.
But the Stone Army would actually just be Alex Stone and the reformed Radical Movement. They're
Right.
only going to do a short run,
Yep,
just for nostalgia.
Yeah.
But my idea was that the mystery opponent was Mykonos,
Yeah.
and you were going to come out and say the only way to defeat an Elite Alliance is with a Radical Movement.
Right.
And out comes Mykonos,
Yeah.
and then you guys win, and
Yeah.
you raise their arms,
Yeah.
and that was just the only way I could
Yeah.
think that would make sense of you to ever appear. 'Cause
Yeah.
I can't think of any other way.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you weren't able to make the show, so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well that idea didn't work, but I'll try again at another time.
Yeah.
So we had the Clash of the Triads tournament,
Yep.
which was the trios tournament,
Yep.
and the first it was supposed to be Radical Movement versus Team ICWS.
Yep.
But Justin had hurt his back, so we had to change that
Right.
to just being Alex, Mykonos, and Mike Delcano.
Yep.
But the original teaming was going to be the Radical Movement,
Right.
but we changed it to the Radical Army.
Okay, fair enough.
So it was going to be, you were going to become the special guest referee because it's Team ICWS versus the
Okay.
Radical Movement. You're
Yeah.
in the middle. You
Yeah.
know, that was just the idea.
Okay.
And it was really cool. The ICWS guys came out to their old theme songs.
Oh,
and,
awesome.
yeah, like we did it. We had a real nostalgia trip that day, which
Yeah.
was really cool. But that was the only other time I
I'll
could
have to
think.
watch that one. I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, it's really good, man. And that was probably the best match on the show, to be honest.
Cool.
And yeah, that was the only other time that I could think
Mm.
to get you involved, and you just plain and simply said to me, "I'm sorry, man, I'm just not into backyard wrestling anymore.
Yep.
Thanks for thinking of me, but I can't make the time to come down."
Yeah, because
And I was like, "Oh, okay, well,
Because I think at that point I'd finished uni and I'd started working full time, and when you start doing that, like your life changes a bit. Like
Yeah.
when you're working, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5,
mhm.
and then weekends you just don't want to do anything. So
And I hope you know I wasn't angry at you.
oh no, of course
I
not.
was just like, oh man, all I ever wanted was just to have
Yeah.
that moment where he walked out and
Yeah.
everyone be like, "What?"
Well, it could still happen one day. You never
One
say
day,
never.
never say never. But the big question: why did Chris Zeplin lose his passion for backyard wrestling? As far as I was concerned, you were up there with me as far as passion went. What happened?
I think, like I said before, it's just a combination of a few things. Like, obviously, real life sort of catches up with you, and I got more busy at uni and started thinking about what I wanted to do for a career and that sort of stuff. Just not having the time or energy to do it all the time, like maybe I used to. The face of the ICWS changing a bit, so some of the older guys sort of stepping aside, and the newer guys. Not that I had anything against them, but I just didn't identify with them as friends as much as
Yeah.
the guys from school.
Of course.
Guys like Knuckles and DJ and those sort of guys. And I think WCWA as well played a big part, because now you had WCWA with the shiny new ring and the lights and all that stuff, and you sort of go back to ICWS and it feels like a step backwards, I think. And I think most of the guys were more interested in making WCWA great, and then sort of treating ICWS as a side thing.
Yeah, and I think it was showing like towards the tail end, people were missing shows.
Yeah.
I think Alex missed a bunch of shows.
Yeah.
Some other people here and there,
Yeah.
but like obviously people could only commit to one thing, and
Yeah.
and I hope that me booking WCWA wasn't the influence on that.
I don't think it was the main
Because when I
influence.
first took over, I said, everyone, ICWS is still the priority.
Yeah.
I made sure that I plain and simply
Yeah.
let everyone know that
Yeah.
we still got to prioritise ICWS
Yeah.
because that was there before us,
Yeah.
So let's not, treat it like the red-headed stepchild,
But as it turned out, people, I guess, moved on to bigger and better things in WCWA, which is fair enough. I mean, I can understand wanting to wrestle in a ring
Yeah.
and do all that stuff. So, and when it's something new and fresh as well, I think that that can really bring a lot of passion and energy out of people. Whereas, ICWS have been going for 6 straight years at that point. So,
Yeah.
that's quite a long time for a backyard wrestling federation.
Yeah.
Quite a long time, considering when we started out, we were just a bunch of guys from school
Yeah.
mucking around on the grass.
And what it became in the end
Yeah.
was like, wow.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was the precursor to what
Mm.
WCWA would
That's
become.
right, yeah.
So 2015 rolls around, you
Yep.
find out ICWS is returning. with or without you.
Yep.
So
Without me, as it turns out.
Yeah. So, what did you think when you heard about that? Were you happy to hear about that?
I was happy that someone was picking it up again, and I was happy that DJ was doing it, because sort of over the history of the ICWS, I felt that sometimes maybe I took over from DJ a bit more than perhaps I should have, because obviously he started the Fed and he played a big role in the early days, and then perhaps I took over a bit and sort of pushed him to the side when perhaps I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
So I guess to give him the opportunity to sort of run with it and do his own thing with it, I was happy for him to do that.
Cool.
And I knew that he would do a good job with it, because obviously he's been around since the very beginning. He knows what it's about.
Yeah.
He wouldn't ruin it in a way, I guess.
Yeah. I think we kicked off really well.
Yep.
I think now it's starting to quieten down a little bit, which is a bit of a shame, but I really missed that passion that was always in the atmosphere at the Z Arena. It's a different federation now.
Yeah.
You can tell when you're there, it doesn't feel exactly like it once was, but it's still pretty cool.
I think part of that is just the guys growing up as well. Like, when you're 16 or 17, you're sort of really into it, and then when you hit your early 20s and real life starts taking over, then you start to lose your time and passion and energy for it.
Yeah.
And, it's sad, but that's just the way it works out sometimes.
Yeah, and it was initially brought back because WCWA were only having one show every 2 months.
Right.
So on the off month, we'll do ICWS.
Right. Yep.
But so far, so good.
Yep.
A bit of issues here and there.
Yep.
I guess, adjusting to a different person in charge other than me or you is obviously going to be difficult for anyone.
Yep.
People want what they want, and
Yep.
if they can't get it, then they're not happy.
I don't think it would have changed that much, though, because DJ was always there. And
Yeah,
Dan
he was always
there.
still an influence on the product.
And people would often talk to him instead of me about storylines, so, I don't think it's changed that much. It's just that obviously DJ now can make all the decisions.
Yeah.
It's, I think, a good thing for him.
Yep. All right. Well, Chris, we'll end this part here. We'll
right.
come back for a quick Q&A.
All right.
There's not that many questions.
Okay,
It's all right.
cool.
So we won't hold up your time too much.
No
but
worries.
thank you once again. Part
Thank you.
2. And that's the end of basically your whole time in backyard wrestling, and hopefully that's not the last time we've seen you.
We'll wait and see.
I think we Chris Zeplin never really got to say goodbye, and I think there should be a way we can figure that out. But we'll talk about that off the microphone,
Alrighty.
so we don't spoil it for anyone. But
That sounds good.
thank you, Chris.
No worries. Thank you, Aston.
No worries, and thank you for listening to the GBYWN Australia podcast. We will be with you for the Q&A part 3 very, very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.